Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Embla Oddsdóttir, and I'm director of the Icelandic Arctic Cooperation Network. I'm also chair of the SDWG Social, Economic, and Cultural Expert Group, and a lead of the SDWG project Gender Equality in the Arctic. I want to advise you before we start that this, at the request of the Arctic Frontiers organizers, this session will be recorded and potentially shared online. We want to approach this session fairly informally. Unfortunately, Charlotte was not able to be with us today, so we have two speakers with us. We would like to ask them to provide an introduction to themselves and address one quick question to get us started. But then following that, we would like to open up the floor to the audience, and people can turn on their cameras, wave their hands, and post their questions directly, so that we can have a conversation rather than a formal seminar necessarily. Concerning the topic that we have today, I will share with you that during the Gender Equality in the Arctic project, for which we are now currently working on a report that's forthcoming in a couple of months, some of our preliminary findings include concerns with a skewed ratio of males and females in rural communities in the Arctic, across the Arctic, in fact. There are significant numbers of females that out-migrate to more urban areas, including to seek educational and employment opportunities. This has significant implications for social sustainability in Arctic communities. Another thing we have seen through our work on the report is that when developing new projects that may provide more jobs, we usually fail to consider gender and the implications of these new job opportunities for males and females. This is the subject of our discussion here today. With us are Ásthildur Sturludóttir, who is the mayor of Akureyri here in Iceland, and also chair of the Arctic Mayors Forum. Victor Norman is with us as well, and he's the chair of the Commission on the Consequences of the Demographic Development in Rural Areas. Now, Victor, I don't know if this is the official title of the report in English. This is our attempt at translating, so perhaps you can correct me if we've got it completely wrong. I want to ask Ásthildur to begin, and Ásthildur, if you could just quickly provide an introduction to yourself, and then perhaps address the following question. Based on your experience in public offices in rural communities in Iceland, could you speak to patriarchal dynamics in often male-dominated rural marginal communities, perhaps including how this might impact population dynamics in these communities? And is there any connection between these dynamics and female out-migration?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Embla, and it's great to see you all, and it's an honor for me to be here today with Professor Norman. As Embla said, my name is Ásthildur Sturludóttir, and I'm the mayor of Akureyri. Before I was the mayor of Akureyri, I was the mayor of Vesturbyggð, which is a small community in the northwestern part of Iceland with only 1,000 people. And so I've been a mayor for almost 10 years now in different parts of Iceland, first in the northwest and now in the north. I could say this is a complicated matter, and gets even more complicated every year because there are rapid changes, and we live in this fluctuating world, especially now during the pandemic. The impact of those dynamics that you mentioned is, of course, much more powerful in the smaller communities, and that may suffer heavy isolation, broken communication, and little or no transportation. This is something that is what we could say fairly unusual in Iceland, but it's of course in many of the communities in the Arctic. This is the fact. Generally speaking, we could say that the educated women, they leave. They leave for, or women tend to leave for education, and they do not come back unless they have, you know, great job opportunities. And they don't want to be completely isolated from the cultural, educational, and the landscape. So they want to go to the bigger cities and to get, you know, to get into the life there. But I know this from a first-hand experience because I grew up in a small town in the West. I grew up in Stykkishólmur, which is on the west side of Iceland, with only 1,000 inhabitants. And then I moved to Reykjavik when I was 16 to get my education, and moved back after university when I was 27, and went to the US for my higher education, and then back out to the rural areas. So I know how it is. And when I became a mayor in Vesturbyggð, I was a single white female. I came out there, and my friends, they said it was really funny because that was the highest ratio of bachelors in Iceland, in Vesturbyggð. So I came there, and there were only very few ladies in my position. And the men tend to have a lower level of education, but the ladies, they have a higher level. And during their pregnancy leaves and maternity leaves, they collect their university degrees. They add a university degree while they are doing their maternity leaves. So it's a strange thing. So these communities, they are male dominated. We can say that too. It's easier for the guys to live in a small rural community than for women. And we tend to be bored. It's just to say it in plain English, we are just bored to death. They are out in their snow scooters and out on their boats, or fishing or hunting or doing whatever. But you have to be very content in yourself to you know, not get bored to death. So in a way, it's tough to live in a situation like that. The boys, they love it. They absolutely love it. My husband, he was brought up in the small town of Patreksfjörður in the Northwest, and he absolutely loved it. But it's hard, it's really tough. And the job opportunities, they are really scarce. It's maybe becoming a teacher or a nurse or maybe a doctor. And if you are a part of the family of the town who owns the fishing industry or the fishing plant, you can get a job there. But for something that needs to have like a PhD or a master's degree in particular sciences, it's really, really, really tough. So the scarce opportunities, they lead to that the women, they leave. And they want to follow their kids when they need to go to get a higher education. The women, they leave. And I have a 18-year-old son. And when we left for Akureyri, he had to leave for his junior college here in Akureyri. He was going to this place to school. So he had to leave to get to school. So, you know, you don't want to let your kid, when it's 15 or 16 years old, leave your household. You want to follow it. So it's a hard thing, you know. It can be really tough for the women to live in a small town.
Thank you, Ásthildur. Thank you for sharing your personal experience. I think it really makes a lot of difference to try to get away from the the academic language into the sort of on the ground real experience.
I could add more.
I'm pretty sure we could discuss this all week. Let's move on to Victor just for a little bit, and then we can keep going and keep pulling at this thread a little bit, because these are very complex issues, and I think the importance of gender issues are generally underestimated in the discourse on Arctic sustainable development. So Victor, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Victor Norman is he was the chair of the Commission on the Consequences of the Demographic Development in Rural Areas, and I'm going to ask him to address the following question. Based on your work with the Commission addressing the consequences of demographic development in rural areas in Norway, this English title that we
It's an all right title.
created is a real mouthful here. Can you, on one hand, speak to which measures have been proposed to ensure sustainable development in rural communities? And perhaps on the other hand, which measures did the Commission propose specifically concerning female outmigration from rural to urban areas?
I don't think I want to answer it directly immediately, because I have to say something about the background.
Okay, go ahead.
We went into this work thinking that the key problem was, as you're talking about, how to stop the net flow of people from outlying areas to the cities. And then we discovered that that's no longer a problem, or won't be a problem, at least over the next 10 to 20 years, because the population in rural areas is becoming so old that there's no young people left, at least not enough to reproduce itself. So essentially the rural areas in Norway are slowly dying. The average age of the population is becoming so high that it will, if we don't do anything, it will first become an old people's home in beautiful surroundings, and then an equally beautiful surroundings for a graveyard. So we have to do something. And actually, the title of our report is "It's All About Norway." It's essentially about the character of the country. If we don't do anything, we may be left with a country in which we've got 3 or 4 medium-sized cities, and that's about it. And that is not the Norway that we want to have. Then you can ask, what's the problem? I mean, is the problem lack of jobs? No. There are so many jobs in the regional areas, rural areas in Norway, that we have to import workers from Eastern Europe in order to fill the jobs. So it's not a matter of jobs. It's a matter of the key problem is the one that Louise talked about. It is getting young women to be willing to live on a small scale, if you like. And that means that we have to shift the entire focus of regional policy from job creation to developing these places into more attractive places to be for young women with high education. And that's a tough task. Just following up on what Louise said, the average Norwegian worker today changes jobs 7 times during his or her working life. So it's not enough to provide a job. You have to be able to change jobs. The average female Norwegian worker changes partner at least twice in the course of a life. So it's not enough to have a job, a boyfriend who gets a job. You must be able to get rid of him again. And the average Norwegian changes house 3 or 4 times during their living life. And the reality of life in small rural areas is that if you move there, you get a job and you're stuck with that job. You bring a man along and you're stuck with him. And you buy a house, and the housing market works so poorly that the minute you move in, the value falls by 20% compared to what you paid for it. It's like a used car. Now, who in her senses would choose a life like that? So somehow we must do something about these things. And what we're saying is, first of all, the focus. We have to have a correct diagnosis. It's no longer a question about creating jobs in outlying areas. Incidentally, the jobs will be there. The old people have incomes. There are massive income transfers from the government to rural areas. So the communities have incomes. That means that there will be jobs in all the areas where the people who live there are demanding services. And that means, this talks about jobs, the only jobs for doctors and nurses and caregivers. Yes, but that's where the future is. That's the growth industry number one in the Western world. And those jobs, some of them are very attractive. I'm the chairman of the board of the medical faculty at the University of Bergen. Our problem is that we only have female students. Fantastic market for. We've got a more gender-separated labor market now than ever before, and women are in the growth part of the labor market, and men are in the dying part of the labor market, and the growing part will be in rural areas as well. So there will be jobs. There will be exciting jobs, good job opportunities, good incomes. But you don't want to be stuck in one place. That means that somehow key number one that we say for this is we have to have an infrastructure that means that you're not isolated in a small place. Now that may be easier in Norway than in other Arctic areas because there are many small communities not too far apart. And somehow we have to make these part of one common labor market, so that you can live in one place and work in another place, or a second place, or a third place, and get the career that you would also get in a larger place. The second thing we have to ensure is that university level education and additions to education must be available in rural areas. So we must decentralize university level, also secondary school, but that's so obvious. But university level primary education and executive education. One of the true success stories in Finnmark, in the northernmost county in Norway, is the small place of Alta, which hardly existed 40 years ago. That's a huge success, and that's simply because they have a university level institution, and a very good one. And as part of that, incidentally, we're also very eager to say that universities and university level institutions in Norway have to stop their movement into the middle of the Atlantic. They have to remember where they are from, and that they have a responsibility for the country and the society and the local community of which they are a part. They are the ones who can provide new ideas, new thoughts, new people, but then they have to take responsibility for their local communities. They mustn't only have the focus on international publications and international conferences. They must have a focus on those, because that's where they're going to pick up all the new knowledge, but they have to bring the knowledge back down into the local communities. So that's sort of our second important thing. On infrastructure, by the way, we also have to ensure, of course, that you have top-rate digital communication possibilities absolutely everywhere. Yeah, it's a tragedy in Norway. When the electric telegraph came in the 1840s, we built telegraph systems all over the country in 6 years. We've now had internet for 30 years, and we still have sort of meager coverage in most rural areas. You can't expect anyone born after 1930 to be willing to live a place where you don't have good internet connection. So that's obvious as well. Then the last part is that we have to have a workshop, a national workshop on new ideas for how we can make, the third is the housing market. We have to do something about the housing market. So the Norwegian State Housing Bank, which was established in the 1950s and has almost gone out of existence, must be reestablished to provide rental housing in rural areas so that you're not stuck in a house with man you brought along. But then the last thing, we need new ideas. Regional policy has to have an entirely different focus. Then we have to have entirely new tools. We suggest various tax measures, which are obvious, give tax incentives for people to move into rural areas, to have the government pay the student loans that you took up if you move to rural areas. We suggest that the speed limit, the age limit for having a driver's license should be reduced to 16 years with some restrictions. I would rather have 16-year-old people on the roads in Norway than 80-year-old people. And if you're not able to move around, then you don't want to live in a rural area. And we suggest sort of other new measures of that kind. But won't be able to invent the wheel. We need sort of a national workshop for what sorts of measures that would be relevant to make people want to move into rural areas. We have it's interesting in Norway, we have had 3 commissions on regional policy, partly probably appointed because the government is discovering that the center party, the Farmers' Party, is growing like mad. It's a major threat in the next election, and they represent the rural areas. But we have 3 separate commissions that have been working on various aspects of regional policy. We on demography, we had one on jobs. They concluded the same that we did. Jobs isn't the problem. But then the last one is the most interesting. It's a panel of young people living in rural areas who have been asked to develop ideas for what they would want or need to be able to stay in rural areas for the rest of their lives. And they are coming up, they're giving their report in 3-4 weeks. I've been talking to them a lot. They're coming up with a long list of interesting new ideas. And that is probably the thing that makes me optimistic after all. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Victor. You've touched upon many of the key issues that are found not only in Norway, but in other northern regions of Arctic states, such as diversity and mobility and connectivity and housing. I also think that this idea of a national workshop where you would discuss new ideas sounds like a good plan. And I wonder, because I know that this session is perhaps only first of many that the Arctic Mayors Forum will be organizing, that perhaps that's an idea, if you will allow us to borrow from your idea, an idea for a seminar or a workshop, to have an international workshop where different regions in the Arctic perhaps share what they have been doing in terms of trying to retain people in local communities. I hope that Northern Norway will not end up being just a pretty graveyard. I'm sure that you will be able to reduce this development, but I wonder, because you discussed the attractiveness of a community being a very important factor, not only job opportunities, and I know that the town of Akureyri, for instance, has emphasized this approach as well. I wonder if Ásthildur would be able to just speak quickly to this, and while Ásthildur is speaking, perhaps our technological geniuses could open the opportunity for audiences to turn on their cameras and start asking questions.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Victor, for a very thorough and good overview. It was really something, and I think we are all very aware of all this that you mentioned, especially the connectivity issues and the housing issues. And these are very important things that we need to address. And I agree on that we should do a workshop, a nationwide workshop. The quality of life is something that in my mind is something that we should focus on. I once visited the island of Frøya outside of Trondheim. And they said to me, well, we are focusing on that it's fun and nice to live in Frøya 24/7. So you have to have fun 24/7, every day and every hour, that it's possible to have fun and enjoy life in that isolated community. And I think that this is something that we need to focus on, not only the job opportunities, like you said, it's the quality of life in these places. And it's only in modern society, it's more than just having a good home and a family and a good job that pays well. And you have to be able to enjoy your interests and meet other interesting people. And that is something that we need to focus on too, that you need to play around people that are similar to you. Similar people, they do best. So it's important that you can meet people with a similar background and enjoy time together. Also, it's my experience that women are less likely to become entrepreneurs in the rural areas. And that is something that we should think about. Women, the educated women, they are mainly doing the jobs provided by the municipality or by the state, like teaching, nursing, working at a kindergarten, or doing some jobs provided by the state, like secure jobs. They are not innovative enough. They are not establishing the fish farming or the fish plants or doing things like that. We tend to focus more on secure income. In Akureyri, we are known for a high quality of life. We focus on good schools, good childcare, a lot of opportunities for children and just the inhabitants in the field of sports. So you can do whatever you want to do. And, it's just a nice life that you live here. I think we are a little bit similar to Norwegians here in Akureyri, Victor. I think you would like it here. And, it's like a slow living. It's a nice life that you live here. And this is something we need to focus more on in the rural areas. It's the quality of life. Schools for the kids. That is really, really, really important, that you have good, you can provide good schools, good education for the kids. And we should use the technology. And I agree with you. It's unbelievable that we don't have connectivity in all over the Arctic. And we have seen it during the COVID pandemic, that connectivity is the most important thing that we have today. And we can solve so many problems with technology. And we can make new opportunities in rural areas with the technology, job-wise and service-wise. And this is something that we should focus on. Digital municipalities, digital services, digital help with psychologists and social workers and everything. We need this now. So connectivity is a big issue, and also, the quality of life. What kind of life we want to live in these places, and how we secure our income and how we secure our investments in the future. Like you said, the house, the worth of the houses, it drops by 25% as soon as you move in. You know, this is our biggest in a single investment in our whole life. So this is really something that we need to focus on as well in the rural areas. And in Iceland, we have the same problem, and that in the rural areas, we have this problem, and we are worried about the age tree. We have because the people out there, they're so old, they're getting old, and they're getting older. And I think, does it answer your question, Embla?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. Thank you, Ásthildur. Now, we've sort of opened the floor, but I don't know if somebody...
Could I make a remark?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
I agree with everything you said. Just emphasizing one point. Traditionally, at least in Norway, the thinking was that in order to reduce the flow of people from rural areas to the cities, we should establish growth centers that could sort of catch them on their way and keep them in at least the region. This challenge now is to make young women who are born and have grown up in the large cities to move into rural areas. And the one thing they won't do, they will never do, is to move into a poor copy of a large city. So somehow what you're saying about developing the authenticity of rural life, the differences from big city life, is, I think, the key answer to this question. We must develop, rural life must be different from life in the big cities, and it must be as varied at the same time as life in the big cities. So different local communities must be different. And so we must leave the idea that Oslo should be the model for all places in Norway. So far, only Bergen, where I live, has avoided falling into that trap. Because if all places look the same, then it's nicer to be in a big one than a small one. So we must be different. And rural life has qualities that city life don't have. And if we really want city life, then we might as well all move to New York. I mean, that, after all, is a real city. I prefer the small format, and I think most people in the Arctic area prefer a small-scale life. But they also have other preferences, like job, family, house, and variability that they somehow mustn't give up in order to get the rural life they really want. So it's about combining two dreams. And if we can manage to combine those two dreams, then I think rural life has a future.
Yeah, I think this, thank you, Victor. I think this speaks very nicely to how levels of expectation have changed, and in a relatively short time, and how we haven't been quite able to adapt to this change in expectations from life. I'm wondering, is there anyone in the audience that would like to chime in here, or should I just keep on with the luxury of asking the questions that I want? I will just do that then. I wanted to, because you were discussing diversity as well. And one of the things that we've been finding in the report is the enormous importance of immigrant populations to Arctic regions and rural communities. I wonder if the two of you could briefly address that. What does that look like in your community? And then we actually have oh, okay. Well, we have a question from the floor, which is very similar, which is, what about the role of immigration? Should rural areas actively work to become attractive multicultural societies? So if we can maybe discuss immigration populations and the importance of those in Norway and Iceland.
Should I start, or Victor, do you want to start?
I can start. I'm
Yeah.
all for immigration. I think if part of the hope for region and the rural areas is immigration. After all, we're talking about aging in the Arctic area, generally speaking. And if we can't reproduce ourselves, then we'd better get some people from the rest of the world. We also know that it's possible to get people from the rest of the world. Go to Spitsbergen. Spitsbergen is the most multicultural place under Norwegian jurisdiction, and it functions extremely well. The problem is that the experience that we have, at least, is that very many immigrants first move to rural areas, and then after a couple of years move to Oslo, or one of the big cities, which of course is natural. It's just like the Norwegian immigrants to America, half of them ended up on the border between Minnesota and Iowa, and the other half ended up in Brooklyn. You're looking for similar-minded people, and that somehow means that we very easily won't get a multicultural local community, but a unicultural local community with a different national background, which I don't think would be good for people who came from abroad and wouldn't be good for us. So we have to work on the developing multi-ethnicity in small communities. And we know from Norwegian experience, some places it functions extremely well. The small town of Florø, north of Bergen, has the most successful experience with immigrants of any town in Norway. So it can function. In other places, it's been a disaster. So it's very much up to the local community and the people who live there themselves. Then, of course, the other problem is that the immigrants that tend to stay are immigrants from Eastern Europe. But they have as much of a demographic problem as we have, plus more. So there's no large pool to take to tap from Eastern Europe. We know that let me be very specific. In the 1800s, Europe was in the demographic transition where death rates fell and birth rates did not fall. And had it not been for the possibility to move to America, Europe would have succumbed under the weight of the large population. Africa is in the same position now that Europe was in the 1800s. The country that manages to tap the population explosion in Africa in a meaningful way will be the winner. The country in Europe that tries to shut their eyes will get a refugee wave at some point that will kill them. So I think we have to start talking about increased immigration from Africa and how to handle that in a constructive way, which is good for the people who come from Africa and is good for the local communities in which they settle. There's nothing about that in our report. Immigration is a non-topic in Norway at the moment. All political parties agree that we don't want to have a discussion on immigration because they're so afraid of Trumpite reactions in Norway. Hopefully that will pass, because I think in the long run, even most countries in Europe will have a severe demographic problem unless they handle immigration in a more intelligent way than they do now. Mm-hmm. That was good speech. Whether it was appropriate, I don't know.
Well said, Victor. Alfred, could you respond as well? And then we have another question from the audience.
Yeah, I can agree upon everything that Victor says. In Iceland, most of the immigrants in the rural areas are from Poland. Mm-hmm. And we have up to 20% of the population in a small town that is mainly from Poland. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the specific numbers in Iceland now, but there are more than 30,000 people that come from Poland that and live in Iceland currently. In Akureyri, we have a very small immigration and immigrant population. It's relatively small compared to the size of the town. When I came here first and went to one play school, and I said, so Anna, how many kids are from abroad, are from Poland? There are 50. The teacher said, so, 50 here in this school. No, 50 in the whole system. Because I was used to 50% of the kids in the kindergarten were from Poland. So it's quite different from from here to the other side. In the rural areas, there is the higher number of a Polish population. Icelanders, they also have been migrating to Norway. In northern Norway, for instance, there's a large population from Iceland, mostly from the westwards of Iceland. Tough seamen, fishermen that went there to get higher salaries and opportunities. But the small towns, they ain't getting bigger. We are not moving there, and people are not moving there. They are moving from there. And there is a lower number of Icelandic people that move to these places than immigrants. There's a higher number of immigrants that move to Patreksfjörður, for example, because I know that than Icelandic people. So if we have increase in the population, it's because of immigrants, not because of people that are moving from other sides of the country. But it's different here in Akureyri, though.
But it's nice that people.
And one, I agree with you with the immigration policy. It's also a very delicate matter in Iceland, and there will be a parliamentary election this fall. And I'm pretty certain that it will be a delicate issue, especially during the crisis in the aftermath of COVID. It's going to be a delicate matter and more delicate as the years go by.
We close the borders today.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are particularly closed here in Iceland as well.
This actually leads us, we have a couple of questions from the audience, and then we have one raised hand, but only -1 minute. So I'm making the decision for all of us to go a little bit over time. And I'm going to segue from this discussion into one of the questions from the audience, which is, could small remote communities become more attractive in a world threatened by more pandemics in the future? And if you can keep your answers short, so we can get to all the questions.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
The answer is yes, but unfortunately pandemics are forgotten very soon afterwards.
That's true. As soon as it's over, it's going to be yesterday's news. Then we have, if we can go to Bryndís Elva. Did you want to pose a question, Bryndís?
Okay. I just want to say I find it also interesting, and there are many issues I want to speak about here. But I will also say that I was also thinking about the lack of contrast, because we are talking about that women are they are they are dominating the universities, but on the same time they are stuck in the smaller places. It's like some contrast there. And I was wondering, because Ástríður was talking about that women are unlikely to be entrepreneurs in smaller places. Now we are talking about here in Akureyri doing another and new employment policy. What can a municipality actually do? What is possible to address there to open for more entrepreneurship in a policy like that? What can they? What can we do as the public sector?
Excellent. Thank you, Bryndís. Ásthildur, do you want to quickly address this?
Yeah, thank you, Bryndís. I think we need a foundation that is good, a municipality that supports women. We need a support system like we have in SSNE, for example. We need role models as well, and we need mentors. And I think it's important for women that are establishing companies or doing something that they need mentors, and they need people to help them through the first year of their businesses. And role models are extremely important, and support systems that we can use to help them during phase one.
Excellent, thank you. We're definitely running out of time now. There was this one other question from the audience that is, it's been touched on partly, but I'm wondering what would happen if I slightly paraphrase it and ask you if you had to name 3 things that would make rural areas attractive enough to attract young females. What would those things be? And this will be our final question to address.
Transportation, connectivity, and extremely exciting jobs, and cute guys.
I think I'm only going to mention one.
Okay.
It mustn't be a one-way final move. You must be able to move on.
Mm-hmm.
People want several phases in their lives, so local communities must give them good jobs, but it must be easy to move to another job and move to another community later on. So you mustn't be stuck. I think that the greatest challenge is you mustn't be locked in.
Excellent.
And then things follow from that.
Excellent. I think we all have something to work with now. So if you have do you have anything final that you want to say, Ásthildur and Victor, before we jump off? Or
No, I just wanna thank you, and thank you, Embla, for being a moderator today. And on behalf of Arctic Mayors, I would like to thank you, Victor, for an excellent conversation. And I look forward to meeting you in person. And I'm pretty sure that we could have a very fruitful and good conversation on you know, all these issues of the Arctic areas.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you for letting me come. My only wish would be that we could have gone on for another hour.
Yeah,
yes.
I certainly agree with you.
And it's great fun on a very important topic. So thank you.
Well, maybe the workshop on new ideas, we would recommend perhaps more time.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you as well for including me in the conversation. I think it's an enormously important conversation. Thank you for participating, and thanks to the audience for being with us and providing us with questions. And that concludes this session.
Thank you. Bye-bye.